Welcome to weekly Quran study at Receiving Noor. We're continuing to study Surah Baqara, the second surah from the Quran. Tonight coincides with a blessed night, Layla al-Bara'a, the night in the middle of Sha'ban. May Allah bless us and guide us all and forgive us all, and puts barakah into tonight's gathering, inshallah. As usual, Dr. Yamina will lead the study, and we're welcome to join in with comments and questions. Jazakumullah khair, Sister Yamina.
آمين آمين. Thank you, Isra. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. So we stopped at ayah 7 of Surah Al-Baqara, and ayah 6 and 7, if you remember, were about the unbelievers, and from 8 onwards, from 8 to 20, there are 13 verses are all about the hypocrites. We'll see, inshallah. So ayah 8, in ayah 8 we're told, and there are people who say we believe in God and the last day, when really they are not believers at all. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. So the surah started with praising of the kitab, of this message, of this book of the Quran, then praising the believers who follow the guidance of that book, and describing them to us. So it's like making them known to us so we can follow their example. Then there was disapproval of their opposites in verses in ayah 6 and 7. And this way, remember, I had said there is no neutral state. And also we get to appreciate the beauty of the guidance of the Quran through seeing the opposite, the state of the unbelievers. Then to fulfill the purpose of guidance, because this, from the beginning, it is about this book, that book actually, that is the book, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. There is no doubt about it. It is guidance, it is mercy to all of us, and it is fulfilling that purpose of guidance and mercy. And so it follows with the hypocrites who dissemble, who give a false, misleading appearance, and therefore deceive others, and primarily we'll see that they're actually deceiving themselves. So from the beginning it was Alif Lam Mim, that is the book in which there is no doubt. It is guidance for the God conscious. So the fact that it is guidance is being shown right there and then, right here and now, in what follows. So it's not only a claim, it is demonstrated, it is actually performing the guidance before us, if we are willing to be guided, of course. So as we open ourselves to its guidance, we can witness the guidance of that book and benefit from it, and confirm that it is truly guidance. But it is guidance for the God conscious, and the God conscious are those who believe in the unseen and are constant in prayer and give out of what we provide for them as sustenance. Those who believe in that which has been sent to you, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, as well as that which was sent before you. It is they who in their innermost are certain of the hereafter. It is those who are on true guidance from their Rabb, from their sustainer, and it is those who are the prosperous and successful. And then comes the unbelievers in 6 and 7. We're told, behold, as for those who deny, it makes no difference whether you warn them or not warn them. They will not believe. So they are not our point of reference for checking if the message of this revelation is guidance or not, because they are not even making an effort to get to know the guidance or to follow it. So we can't point out and see like lots of people don't believe. Yeah, they are not interested. They don't even know what the guidance is about. So they can't be our point of reference. God has sealed their hearts and their hearing, and over their sight is a veil, and they have great torment. And so this was for us to show us that the way of unbelief leads to a sealing of the hearts and the hearing, and there is a veil over their hearing and sight, meaning they become the more they insist on living that way, the more they become less and less sensitive to the reality and to the true purpose of life, to the true meaning of life. And the warning comes at the end, which is also a mercy and a guidance when we are told, and they have great torment, because we talked a lot about it last week, because we understand we need hope and fear at the same time. We need to know that that is a path that leads to great suffering. And we don't have to suffer all our life and at the end say, oh, this was all suffering. I wish I had not followed this path. That wouldn't be merciful. And that's why we're told beforehand, don't follow that way. That way leads to great torment. And then comes the description of the hypocrites or the dissemblers. In Ayah 8, we are told, and there are people who say, we believe in God and the last day, when really they are not true believers. And it carries on until Ayah 20. It's all about these people. And so this means that only 2 ayats deal with unbelievers, but 13 ayah are dealing with hypocrisy and dissembling. And this is because as believers, we're more likely to fall into hypocrisy than into total unbelief. And so we need to know what hypocrisy is in order to recognize it and be able to deal with it and, inshallah, prevent it, take some preventive actions, inshallah, so we won't fall into that state of hypocrisy. And also, it's in a way, hypocrisy can be much more harmful because it's more insidious, it's more elusive, it's more difficult to pinpoint. Yeah, it's clear, unbelief. Okay, I believe in God, I'm not an unbeliever. But hypocrisy is much more confusing and therefore more harmful, because it's like an internal hidden problem, a disease or a disease, as it's called in the following ayah, in ayah 10. It's called a disease, maradon. And so it can deplete the affected person from inner strength without the person even being aware of it, because they don't know that they have the disease. But when the problem is out there, it's easier to see it and take action against it. It can even strengthen the person's resolve to stand, to take action against it. But when it's inside and we don't see it, it becomes much more dangerous and much more harmful. And that's why there are the warning against hypocrisy is much longer. And also, since we can be affected by hypocrisy in belief to different degrees, as we hear about hypocrisy being condemned in these ayats, to the extent that there is belief in our hearts, inshallah, we will, to that extent, we will consider it seriously. We will consider the illness of hypocrisy, the possibility of being a hypocrite to even a tiny degree. It's described in such harsh terms that it makes us realize that we don't want any of it. We can't say, it's okay, I have only a little bit of hypocrisy. It's like someone saying, it's okay, a little bit of cancer, I'm only at stage 1 of cancer. We don't want that. That's hypocrisy is like cancer of our spiritual life. And so we are warned, and inshallah we're urged to make an effort to be truthful and change the situation, to do something about it. So back to Ayah 8, we're told there are people who say, we believe in God and the last day, when really they are not truly believers. And the term used is وَمِنَ النَّاسِ, like some people, from among the people, in referring to the hypocrites, which indicates that hypocrisy is not peculiar to a particular group of people, but it can affect anyone, any human being. That's why among the people, some people. And also the ayah does not specify who the dissemblers, who the hypocrites are. Some people, very vague. And this is, we know this is also what the Prophet ﷺ did. He knew who the hypocrites were. Well, the hypocrites who were the main hypocrites, not believers with little hypocrisy. And he did not expose them. And there is much wisdom in not exposing them, but the ayah here also does not expose them. And one of the possible reasons is that sometimes if corruption remains hidden, if it's concealed, then to some degree it is like a yasatar, there is satr, there is the people perpetrating, the hypocrite themselves, those who are corrupt, they will also try to hide it, because the norm would be that this is not good. But if it is exposed, then some people may become bold and go public, and then they're not concerned to spread corruption, because the more we hear about it, the more it's exposed, the more people will get used to it. And it does not shock them anymore. And so the balance or the distinction between corruption and virtue, vice and virtue, will start getting confused in people's minds and hearts. It's like in the hadith, we're told, إِذْ لَمْ تَسْتَحِي فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. If you have no haya, I don't know how to translate haya, maybe shame. You can do as you like. And that haya, that shame, is lost when corruption is exposed and talked about as if it was a normal way to do things, the normal way to live. So in a way, we say like not practicing, hypocrisy is not practicing what we preach. However, we need to be careful, because it doesn't mean in order not to be a hypocrite, then stop preaching. or stop claiming that you are a believer. There is a tricky situation here, and inshallah, when it's clear, it's very helpful. So the solution is not to stop identifying with belief or with the believers so that there is no hypocrisy, because that will not cure hypocrisy. Instead, it would only it will
make it worse.
yeah, it will make it worse. It's what came to my mind is like I heard this many times. Like a person says, I cannot when I pray, I cannot focus on the prayer, and so the person is very much pained about it. And the solution, instead of, okay, how shall I ameliorate my prayer? What shall I do so that I'm focused during the prayers? No. The solution, they say, okay, so this prayer is not worth anything, so they leave the prayer totally. So it's like you had a seed, the seed still potentially can give fruit. Now you throw the seed away, and the situation is much worse. So instead,
Yamina, this reminded me of a sister many years ago. I had met this sister, and she said she's so ashamed of her sins and so embarrassed to go before God that she stopped prayer. I don't know if it is relevant to this topic, but it's interesting how that feeling of being overwhelmed with our guilt or our
it's a trick of Satan. Like, it should be the other way around. You need to go and ask for forgiveness more and be in the presence of God more. Subhanallah. But we'll see why we fall into this trap, inshallah. So instead, we need to strive to live up to our claims instead of giving up on our claims, and find out the reasons behind our insincerity if we feel that we are not being sincere enough, and deal with them and pray for help and ask for forgiveness. So it means let's try to raise our practice to the level of our claims, or the claim we believe in, or the beliefs we claim to believe in, because some people, as Isra just gave the example, they lower their beliefs to the level of their practice, and then they conform the ideal to their reality rather than uplifting their reality to meet their ideal. There is a word, it said, if you don't live according to your belief, you start believing in what you live with. So that's becomes our reality. So instead of changing our beliefs and to match with how we live, we need to, inshallah, make an effort and pray so that we transform ourselves and so that our lives will match our beliefs. Because the other way is it's a dangerous path. It leads to all kinds of vices, and it leads away from virtue and from haqq, from truthfulness and reality. So, and it leads to an incurable kind of hypocrisy. So this incurable hypocrisy is not only the failure to practice what we claim to believe, but it is the failure to believe in it. This is very important. This is what the ayah is saying. They say we believe, but they are not believers. So it is primarily about the belief, because often we will see people talking about the practice. It is true that the practice is part of it, But if we start with the practice, it can lead to dangerous ways, and it doesn't lead us to the cure. So hypocrisy is the failure to believe what we claim we believe in. It means we don't believe, full stop. It's not that we believe, but we are not practicing what we believe. If we understand it that way, which usually among Muslims, that's how it is understood, then it can only either people will, out of fear, get scared and put it under the rug, the whole issue, never talk about it, or go into a state of despair and let go of everything because you get too overwhelmed. Because when you don't have that belief, you don't have that strength to practice what you hear around you. So in order to have that strength, you need a strength of iman, a strength of belief. And then slowly, it will transform the person. The person will get, it's not even like you won't force yourself. It becomes your new way of being, you don't force yourself to be grateful. You are grateful when you recognize the blessings. But if you don't have the belief, you are not perceiving. If we don't perceive the world in a certain way and we are not aware of the blessings, we are not aware of the blessings as blessings coming directly from our Rabb, then we don't feel grateful towards him. And so, for instance, the salat, the 5 daily prayers, feels like a burden. So this is very, very important. Hypocrisy is related primarily to lack of iman, belief. Even if we do practice and there is no iman, there is still hypocrisy there. But when there is iman and sincerity, then the lack of practice can be a stage, inshallah, on the path to higher levels of iman and higher levels of practice, inshallah. So the istiqamah and the directions are also important. Two people may be standing in the same place, but one may be heading north and one may be heading south. One may be praying more, believing more and practicing more. One maybe have no belief, and therefore all the imitative beliefs that he got are deteriorating, and so are his practices, the practice of the rituals. So at one stage they may look the same, but one is going forward in iman and one is getting backward or downward. In Surah Al-Munafiqun, there is a whole surah called after the hypocrites, called Al-Munafiqun, Surah 63. And in Surah 63, in ayahs 7 and 8, we are told that the Munafiqun, the hypocrites, are the ones who say, give nothing to those who follow God's messenger until they abandon him. What is important is, however, to God belongs the treasures of the heavens and the earth, though the hypocrites do not understand this. So this is important. You see, they do not know who God is. وَلِلَّهِ خَزَائِنُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلَكِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ. They do not grasp this. They do not understand that everything in the heavens and the earth belong to God alone. So this is a description of the munafiqin. You see, there will be descriptions pertaining to practice as well, but they are all a result of their lack of iman, the lack of knowing who God truly is. And in the next ayah, so they say, once we return to the city, to Medina, to the Al-Medina, the mightier will drive out the inferior ones. But might So this is important. But might belongs to God and to his messenger and to the believers. But the hypocrites are not aware of this, do not know this. So وَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةُ وَلِرَسُولِهِ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَكِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. They don't know this. They are not aware of this. This is very important. And that's exactly what we told in Ayah 8, when we are told and there are people who say, we believe in God and in the last day, when really they're not truly believers. And you see, they claim either falsely or they think they are truly believers, and they emphasize they believe. We believe in God and in the last day. They could say we believe in God in the last day. آمنا بالله واليوم الآخر. No, آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر, and in the last day. So there is an emphasis. And the emphasis on in God and the last day. Remember, the al-muttaqin, the God conscious, they started with being described as those who believed in God and they had certainty of the hereafter. They were certain of the hereafter. So these people think that they believe. I won't talk about those who are not believers but pretend to be believers. There are two kinds of hypocrites. I'm talking about the second kind of hypocrites, those who do not know that they are not truly believers. They think they are truly believers. They think belief means you don't deny, that's it, full stop. And so they don't make an effort. And also there are degrees in hypocrisy because there are also degrees in belief. So there are those who are aware of this and therefore they will take action. And so these ayat will be guidance for those who are muttaqeen. They are God conscious, they are aware, and they will benefit from the guidance of this verses, this ayat. There are those who are mindless, they live in ghafla, and so they don't even read or listen to them, these ayats as pertaining to them, as bringing guidance to them. They read it for others out there, some people out there, and so they don't benefit from it. And that's dangerous. That's very dangerous, because that's itself a sign of mindlessness and a sign of hypocrisy.
Sister Yamina, this is an interesting notion to me, because I have always read this verse. Now I realize what I thought is there is not there. I had it as brackets. So when it says, and by the way, we're looking at verse 8 at Surah Baqara for those who just joined in. And there are people who say we do believe in God and the last day. And I always had in my mind the addition, and there are people who say, in brackets, to other people. So they're trying to fool other people. But here, it's not that actually. The verse doesn't say these people are saying to other people. It can include that as well, as you're saying, but it also includes people who say, we believe. And in reality, they're not believing. So this is, just wanted to share that it's interesting. I hadn't noticed it before.
Actually, I was not going to, since you said it, I was not going to go into the details of the grammar. But if you look at the Arabic, actually a more literal translation would be, and there are among the people, not those, the one who says, because it's man yaqulu, one, not yaquluna, because in Arabic, if the verb comes at the beginning, then it's singular, even if the subject is plural. But when the subject comes before, then the verb has to follow so when you say الناس يقولون, but here there is between men, who, and the men here is used in the singular. but afterwards everything becomes we believe, and they are not true believers. Becomes, so the person who is speaking is one person. Subhanallah, which is
but he says we. Why? I hadn't noticed it either.
Because there are lots of things, and I didn't want to actually go there.
Okay.
But I feel that because the muttaqi won't say we believe. What does it mean we believe? You believe yourself. It's an individual responsibility. You know God or you don't. But when it is taqlid, when it is imitative, I have no evidence who is God. I don't know who is God, why I'm believing this. But we, the Muslims, however, whatever my community is, we believe in this. So it makes sense, actually. It's very telling, but because it needs analyzing of the grammar, I don't want to go there.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair.
And then we're told they are not true believers at all. And not, they said, we believe, they use the verb, but the ayah ends with, they are not believers, instead of, for instance, it could have been, they don't believe. And it's like as if when they say, we believe, it's as if there is an implicit claim that we are believers, and therefore God is saying, no, they are not believers. And the negation is very strong. It's not they are not true believers. They are not true believers at all. Ma is used, which is a very strong negation, categorical. And be. When you say, in Arabic, if you say, ma huwa, whatever. ما هو سخيا. He is not being generous. It means he's not generous. It means he is not being generous right now. Generally, he could well be a generous person. But when we say ما هو بي وما هم بي مؤمنين, it means he is not generous at all. He is not a generous person. He's never been one. So here it's saying they are not believers, they are not true believers, they've never been believers, or at least they are not believers at all. It's a very strong وَمَا, and then bi mu'minin, وَمَا hum bi. And then comes ayah 9 and 10, and in ayah 9 and 10 we are told they seek. Very scary now. I felt very scary when I was reflecting on this ayat. Almost wanted to give up. They seek to deceive God and those who have believed, but they only deceive themselves, though they do not realize it. In their hearts there is a disease, and God has increased their disease, and painful torment awaits them, especially because of their persistent lying. يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون. So they seek to deceive God, يخادعون, because they are not, we are told at the very end of the next ayah, ayah 10, because كانوا يكذبون. كانوا is, they were doing it all the time, persistently, constantly. So because they lie persistently, because they are not true to themselves, because they are false to themselves. And that's why they don't even realize that they are only deceiving themselves. ما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم, as a consequence. And so they show utter foolishness, utter stupidity, let's say, while attempting to deceive God himself, which is impossible. But they are doing it, first they are doing it unconsciously. If they were conscious, they wouldn't be, they would be more true to themselves. So they're not even aware that they are trying to deceive God. And this is also because they don't know who God is truly. Now, if they know who God is truly, does it mean that they would be, that's the cure? No, that's the beginning. First, in order to know who God is truly, we need to make an intention. Because without that intention, no one can, it's like no one can taste, eat food for me or drink water for me. No one can know God for me. And it is not about reading information, it's about living and confirming and witnessing that information. So it becomes ma'rifah, it becomes gnosis and knowledge and knowing and certainty. And that state has to be maintained, and the person has to again and again choose and be willing to surrender to that reality. So it's not because, oh, poor people, they don't know God. It could be that they don't know, that's why. But the not knowing itself is often the result of that attitude, or of the lack of intention to know God. As we're told in the Quran, they have no grasp of God's true measure. وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهُ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. For instance, in Surah Al-Hajj, which is Surah 22, ayah 74, we are told, مَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَقَوِيٌّ عَزِيزٌ. They have no grasp of God's true measure, for truly God is most powerful, almighty. But they don't know that, as the other ayah I shared before was saying. They don't know in Surah Al-Munafiqun. They don't know how powerful and almighty God is. In their imagination of who God is, it's very removed from the reality. In Surah Al-Zumar, Surah 39, ayah 67, we're also told they have no grasp of God's true measure. On the day of resurrection, the whole earth will be in his grip. The heavens will be rolled up in his right hand. Glory be to him. Subhanahu wa ta'ala amma yushrikun. They cannot grasp God's power, God's might. And so subhana, may glory be to God, he is above whatever the partners they ascribe to him. Because if there is hypocrisy, it means there is, we said, it's primarily because of lack of belief. Lack of belief means it's either belief or shirk. Shirk, unbelief. It means giving might and power of creativity to other things, to ourselves, to causes, to things around us. God is not there, he's not the Rabb. Even if he's God, he is far away, a stranger. He doesn't have anything to do with our lives here and now. And we are told when they are attempting to deceive God, they are actually only deceiving themselves. مَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ. And as a consequence, they foolishly harm themselves while imagining that they are seeking benefits. And they are truly ignorant. They show how ignorant they are of the reality, because they fail to distinguish between what is true and what is false, and what is beneficial and what is harmful. The first thing is they are not even true to themselves. That's that's where the illness starts. And that's why they recklessly and mindlessly increase their sickness while seeking a cure, while seeking maybe not a cure because they're not even aware that they have a disease, but they are seeking happiness, they are seeking something good for themselves, and what they do is only increases their sickness, and they end up in an agonizing, very painful suffering. So ayah 9, we're told they seek to deceive God and those who have believed, but they end up only deceive themselves, although they do not realize it. In another ayah in Surah An-Nisa, Surah 4, ayah 142, we are told explicitly the hypocrites seek to deceive God. And the same word is used. إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهِ. In ayah 9 of Surah Al-Baqara, it's يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهِ. In 142 of Surah 4, it's إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهِ. The hypocrites seek to deceive God. So we know that those who seek to deceive God are the hypocrites, because that's explained in another part of the Quran. For instance, in this ayah, it's in other ayats as well, in other parts of the Quran as well. So we're told the hypocrites seek to deceive God, but it is He who causes them to be deceived. It's like they're falling in their own trap. When they stand up to pray, they do so sluggishly and reluctantly, only to be seen by people, and remembering God only very little. So you see, here we are given cues how to recognize hypocrisy. In Surah Al-Baqarah, it's establishing the foundation. Since Surah Al-Baqarah is, as I mentioned in earlier classes, it's about establishing belief, establishing iman and taqwa. It shows us how to establish taqwa, and therefore, and also how to purify our hearts from hypocrisy. And so if you are going to purify our hearts from hypocrisy, it's going to be by filling our hearts and with firm belief in God, in Akhirah. But in other passages in the Quran, in other surahs, we are given cues to recognize symptoms, let's say, of hypocrisy. For instance, being sluggish and reluctantly, lazily going to pray in a lazy way to the salat. وَإِذَا قَامُوا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ قَامُوا كُسَالَى. And only to be seen by يُرَاءُونَ النَّاسِ. And this is the يُرَاءُون and riya from ra'a, to see and to be seen, doing things to be seen, showing off, is also one of the meaning of riya, is not only showing off, but hypocrisy. So hypocrisy is something to do with showing off. And the other one is that they are reluctantly going to pray and lazily, only to be seen by people, and remembering God very little. وَلَا يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. So this is very important. So it means that, yes.
Now, what if somebody says, well, I don't pray to be seen, and I remember God often, or how do we bring awareness about that other part?
This is not, no one is going to read this for others. Everyone is going to read for themselves, and it's up to them to be sincere and truthful with themselves or not. And these are not the only signs, but these are among the signs. So what other people are going to say, it's there.
I mean, what I say, I just meant to say, but there are other indications you're saying.
Yeah. That's good. If you don't go to pray lazily and you reluctantly, and if you actually, that's what we need to do. If you are doing that, then this ayah is telling us, do it even more. This is, you're on the right way. Never let go of remembering God very often, because if you forget about it, you will find yourself you will fall into hypocrisy. So that's good. You passed the test. Cancer free, alhamdulillah. Hypocrisy free.
But ayah number 7 gives the impression that, or at least it can be confusing in the sense that the khatam Allah ala qulubihim, that people could feel victims, but it is not within their will.
Those were the unbelievers. And then,
but it does cause, do you see that how it might, and especially with the zadahum maradan, that if
no, it's
both,
that
in both ayahs, number 7 and number 9.
I see. I didn't want to go there, but that's clear. It is clear that if I don't do my assignments, if I just put my name, take some classes, and never show up, never do my assignments, then I'm going to fail. There are two ways of saying it. When I'm failing, actually, it is the system or the teacher is failing me. The teacher is failing me for a reason, not haphazardly. It's because I didn't fulfill the conditions. So it's the same here. It's because this illness, I'll talk more about it, but the illness of hypocrisy is such an illness that, and it's saying at the very end of ayah 10 that they, how was it? They persist. بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ. So it's giving us clearly the reason why their illness, their diseases increases. It's because they do not stop. They lie constantly and persistently. So you want your cure, you stop lying. It's telling us what the reason for the illness is. You want to pass your class? You don't want to fail? Okay, here are the assignments. You do your assignments. No, I want to roam around and learn nothing, but you give me a degree that says that I'm a doctor. Even if they give me a degree, I will not be a doctor because I never went through the...
but that is different. Yamina, that is different from increasing the disease.
I will give, let me get back to it when I come to that ayah, okay? Inshallah.
Okay.
Dr. Yamina, there's a question here, but maybe we'll keep it to the end.
Is it related?
It says, how does Riya and social media play a role? Often we will post things out of excitement or wanting to inspire or share something. Is that falling under the trap of Riya?
Okay, well, let's talk more about what it is, and then if there are still questions, then we will talk within that context, inshallah.
Okay.
So here in ayah 142 of Surah 4, it was they pray only reluctantly and only to be seen by people. And also in so they do things not sincerely because they believe so. It's nothing to do with sharing with others, with being public or not. It is the intention. The intention is not because they believe so, but only to be seen by others and be praised by others. So this is important. That's why it is not the action. That's why I said in the beginning, it's not, I cannot look at an action necessarily and say this is hypocrisy. Sometimes it may be clear, but it's more about the intention. And so the person, only the person knows deep down why truly they are doing it, or if they're confusing things. Sometimes because there are degrees. Some people are clearly doing it only to be seen and praised, but for lots of people, for the believers, it's going to be degrees. And that's why we make istighfar and remember God more often, so that we get purified of giving importance to what others think about us and their approval, seeking their approval, because then we will be seeking only God's approval, inshallah. The more we know who God is, the more we will feel we will need to seek his approval only, inshallah. So there are other ayats talking about people doing this only for people. For instance, in Surah 4, Ayah 33, we are told, and God does not love those who spend their possessions on others only to be seen and praised by people. And here the word is ri'a. So it's really to be praised by people, the while they believe neither in God nor in the last day. So it's clear, the ayah is clear. And he who has Satan for a soulmate, how evil a soulmate has he. وَمَنْ يَكُنُ الشَّيْطَانُ لَهُ قَرِينًا فَسَاءَ قَرِينًا. And remember, the shaitan is qareen to those who do not remember God. You don't want shaitan as your qareen, as your soulmate, as your second self, as a false self that you identify with, and you are not aware of your true self. That in itself is a lying, because I don't even know who I am truly. Then remember God often. And of course, remembering God is not only saying Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Allah, Allah, as we were taught all the time, and we don't even know who God is. To remember God means remember who God is. I need to know him first, and in order to know him, I have to know myself as abd, as someone who's totally dependent on someone's creativity, someone sustaining, someone is taking care of my everything, my seeing and breathing, my life. Nothing belongs to me, and everything is given to me right here and now. I'm being sustained in life. And so the more I know myself as who I truly am, my true self, the less I will be lying to myself about myself, and therefore I won't be deceiving myself, and I won't deceive others. And only then will I know my Rabb truly. God is my Rabb. And only then I would be able to remember him. Because if I don't know him, how can I remember someone I don't know? I will be just repeating words like a parrot without meaning them, without knowing what they mean. So this is very important. And you see how the Quran is so consistent and so clear, mashallah. The riyah here is showing off attracted my attention because it is a word that means hypocrisy as well. And it reminded me of the etymology of the term hypocrite in English. It actually comes from a Greek word, and the Greek word originally means stage actors. And so it's easy to see how this word hypocrite, the original Greek word, has come to mean someone who is fake. It means someone who is not who they claim to be. It's not who they truly are. They're just acting like, it is almost like they're acting a role. That's what the original was. And so when no one is looking, so if they are acting a role, the role is tied to an audience. And so when there is no audience, when there is no one looking, they revert to their true self because they don't need to act anymore. So in a way, it's like saying hypocrisy is that state when people reduce themselves to being like actors on a stage, and they deprive themselves of being who they truly are most of the time. And actually, even when they're alone, they are lost. They don't know who. They never made any effort to get to know themselves even. It's very sad. So they have no sense of reality, no sense of lasting or grounded sense of self as abd, because they don't know themselves as abd, and therefore they don't know their Rabb, and they have not made an effort to know him. So there is no groundedness for them. And so if you have no grounding, you're going to seek meaning and value in other things. For instance, in being praised by others, in seeking approval of others, because you get value. If people value you, it's as if you gain value. You see they see themselves in the mirrors of others or others' opinion of them. And so they live their life in search for approval from others, either outwardly or in hidden, subtle ways, because the person may not even be aware of what's going on. And that's the danger, actually. And that means they perceive their dignity, their worth, not from being abd, not from their Rabb, not from God, since they don't truly know God. They don't know him as Rabb, but from how other people perceive them. And that's why they act different, or what they think other people perceive them. It may not be what people think of it, but for instance, it could be a title. What people think about the title is not important. What I think people will think about it is what matters. And that's why they act differently when they are seen. For instance, they do things for others to see, and they're concerned about what others may say about them. And in Ayah 38 of Surah 4, we were told they spend their possessions on others only to be seen and praised by people. So the hypocrites are people who have lost their true selves, or they have repressed their true self, which is their being abd, which is to be a conscious mirror to the divine names. A abd is a conscious mirror to Rububiyyah. And instead they live by the demands of others. But here, let's be clear, it's not like people are demanding things from them. No, that's their own, it's all their own construct. They don't care about other people. They only care about how they are perceived. They themselves are perceived by other people. They are concerned about how other people think of them. It's about them. It's all about them. It's a very self-centered attitude. And that's why they are lying. When they're lying for themselves, not for other people. They're not concerned about the wellness of other people. So it's not misunderstood. In other passages from the Quran, we told why the hypocrites display this kind of duplicity and deceit. And that's because they act differently with different audiences. We're told, like, when we're there with the believers, they say this. When they are alone or with the disbelievers, they say something else. So because their answer is not genuine, they are not authentic, they act differently with different audiences. It's like the hypocrites like morph according to the situations. And in order to do that, they have to hide their true beliefs, their true thoughts, so much that at the end they lie, they start believing their own lies, or they lie to themselves, or they're not concerned about who they are, what they truly want, what it's like a, how do you call it? Not brainwashing, but conditioning. And it's all in order to win approval for various reasons. And so the lying becomes like second nature, like we were told Satan becomes their soulmate. It becomes like lying is what they do without even being aware of. So much that they lose their core. Their identity is shaped by what's out there, not what's in them, not what they truly confirm. And so the resulting is serious pain, because no amount of approval is going to fill that need for the heart or bring it satisfaction. People can't, even if they were 24/7 out there, they can only approve or praise them so much. And deep down, they know that that approval doesn't amount to much, because it's a construct, it's their own self-perception. So deep down, because only lasting meaning, only genuine purpose can satisfy the heart, this situation causes much pain to the hypocrite, the liar. And deep down, the hypocrite knows, otherwise there would be no, it's not like they lost their humanity, otherwise there would be no suffering and no pain. So deep down, the hypocrites know that their lives is phony and fake, and that the approval they get is not for them, because they are cheating their way to get it. So imagine how awful it must feel deep down, like this life is like a real tragedy. It's just imagining it is scary. And this is all because they don't know God. They don't believe in God because they don't know him. What they think, even when they think they believe in God, that's not God. That's who they think is God. They don't know God as their compassionate, loving, merciful, generous Rabb. Rabb is the key word here. They don't know God as Rabb. They don't know, they may know about God. They may have heard about God. They may not deny the existence of God, but they don't know him as the Rabb who creates people, who creates everything, who provides for everything, for everyone, sustains everyone, cares for them, loves them, even guides them, guides us to his infinite and eternal mercy, not only in this world, but in the next as well. So for these people, for the hypocrites, God is someone who runs the universe somehow, but he's very remote, very vague, even abstract. And all of us can identify with this situation at some point in our lives. That's how, personally, there was a time when God was someone very remote. So a God exists, but he has nothing to do with their life. He exists only sort of on the periphery of life. He's a stranger. He feels stranger. He feels alien. He doesn't feel close. In the Quran, God describes himself as Wali al-Mu'minin. He is the protector, the friend, the intimate friend of the believers. So the true believers is the one who know God in such a way as Rabb, so he feels his protection. He feels God as a friend. So the remedy to this disease of the heart, the disease of hypocrisy, is knowing God as Rabb. And this requires that they know themselves as ibad, as abd for each person, which means totally dependent on God's rububiyyah, on God's sustaining, and willing to accept and surrender to this reality, knowing this reality is not enough. We have to be willing to accept it, to surrender to it. This is the truth, there is nothing else. To avoid it, pretend it's not there, is just fooling ourselves, deceiving ourselves. That's what hypocrisy is about. And so the remedy is, in order to accept it and surrender it, we have to maintain that acceptance and that surrender. And so we have to remember this reality. And in order not to forget, we need to constantly remember God as our Rabb and to constantly be grateful to Him. And so when we bow and prostrate in prayer, we do it willingly, with appreciation, with satisfaction, because this is a time, an opportunity to remember who we truly are as Abd, as the receivers of all these blessings, countless blessings, as who we are as honored guests of our generous and merciful Rabb. Then God won't feel like a distant figure, because that's not believing God. And the evidence is that it does not satisfy the heart. And to the degree that we get to know God as Rabb, and we experience His beautiful names and His providence towards us and towards all beings, by the way, everything around us, and we experience it, we confirm it, we witness it, then we become less and less concerned with the approval of people and more concerned with the approval of our Rabb, because only His approval matters and nothing else. Everything else is just a delusion of our lying. It's a deception, a lie that we told ourselves, and then we make it into a bubble and we live in it. And in Ayah 10, when we are told, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ, in their heart there is a disease, at the end we're told an agonizing, painful torment awaits them. It's like God threatens the hypocrites in this ayah by pointing out the severity of the resulting torment. And this threatening, this warning, it's a warning, is itself mercy, is itself guidance. Because if you see someone going in the wrong way and you don't say anything, ask a compassionate parent. You don't let your child go into harm without saying anything. So this ayah is like telling them, if you're seeking happiness and satisfaction, which everybody is seeking, that's the fitrah, that's how we are created. It's saying if you're seeking it through dissembling, through lying, through deceiving, know that it will only increase your misery and suffering here and now, and even more in the hereafter, because in the hereafter there is no way to run away from the reality. There is no way to pretend or to numb our senses. We have to face the reality in akhirah. So everything, happiness will be more intensified and suffering will also be more intensified. No veils there. And this means that hypocrisy is not even like other sins, which give some insignificant, passing, immediate pleasure. Even if it's insignificant, there is a little bit pleasure of the ego. Here it's so the resulting suffering is so terrible, and it makes the disease increase because they are false to themselves, because they persist in lying. So this is guidance and mercy in the form of a warning, because the situation is very serious, and therefore it requires a severe warning. It's like a surgery. There is cancer, you have to clean the cancerous cells, or to take some drastic action. And also the ayah is like saying, if you don't come to your senses, you will be exposed before the people as liars, so they do not trust you, and so that your sickness does not spread and doesn't harm others in one way. In another way, primarily, is for each one of us to not let it spread within us. And all this is because of the persistent lying. That is their disease. It's very, very interesting. Throughout this surah, we are taught I had said we are taught to purify our hearts from hypocrisy. We are taught how to attain taqwa. And one of the ways to attain taqwa is to be aware of hypocrisy. That when we are not seeking taqwa, when we are not remembering our Rabb, then we are remembering other things. When we are not worshipping God alone, we are worshipping other things. There is no, I am not worshipping anything. Worshipping means I am attached, I adore, I love, I give importance to something. I seek the approval of someone or something, either God or other things. Either God, and He is the source of everything, so there is no lying there, or I'm lying to myself, I'm seeking it. Shirk is seeking it too from things that they cannot answer me, and that's why it's a terrible disease. And throughout the surah, we are told how to purify our hearts from hypocrisy and lying to ourselves by establishing iman, belief in our hearts. And then, inshallah, we may increase in levels of taqwa. We cannot increase in taqwa while there is hypocrisy. We cannot get healthier and healthier while there is cancer. In other passages of the Quran, we are told, for instance, in Surah 8, Ayah 49, at the same time, the hypocrites and those in whose heart there is a disease were saying this and this. إذ يقول المنافقون والذين في قلوبهم مرض. In Surah Al-Ahzab, twice, again, وَإِذْ يَقُولُ الْمُنَافِقُونَ وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. Always the same phrase is used. When the hypocrites and those with whose hearts there is a disease, with diseased hearts. And those whose hearts there is a disease it means not only the munafiqun, not only the hypocrites, it's saying, it's a reference to the believers. From the context you understand, it's talking about the followers of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's a reference to the believers who are weak of faith, who have weak belief, and therefore they become hesitant. They get scared of the unbelievers. They may even admire their strength or worldly goods, and so they can be lured by them easily. They can be lured by the worldly things easily. Their faith is not grounded enough, so they can't stand their ground. So again, it is related to firmness of belief or weakness of belief. Nifaq, hypocrisy, and the disease of the heart is due to a weakness in belief. And the result is that lahum wa lahum adabun alim. And because lahum comes at the beginning, it's placed earlier in the sentence, there is an emphasis that this is a very painful torment, and it is constant. And it is constant and does not end as long as they don't give up the lying. So imagine feeling a constant terrible pain from intense anxiety that only increases. Ustad Nursi gives examples. He says, for instance, their situation, he gives many examples. I'll give only one or two. He says, for instance, if someone is afflicted with insomnia, the more you try to sleep, if you get upset that you are not sleeping, that upset, that anger is going to dispel our sleepiness and will not be able to sleep at all. So the insomnia is going to increase. And because this is a law of creation, it's saying God does it. But God does it, but if I don't get upset and surrender to the reality, I am more likely to either fall asleep, or at least I would be more rested, even if I don't sleep, if I surrender and accept the reality rather than fight it. Or like someone, he says, whose heart is full with worries. And this excessive anxiety, what is going to do? The more you worry, the more your heart is going to, it becomes like obsessive. You can't stop worrying anymore. After a certain point, the momentum is such that you can't stop worrying anymore. And so that is like the illness increases. The illnesses of the heart, like envy, hatred, anger, anxiety, are all of this. Anything that is a disease of the heart increases unless we stop and surrender. When we surrender to the reality, we stop lying to ourselves. Because when I'm worrying a little bit in order to pray and take action is healthy. But if it's worrying as though I am the one who needs to do something, and therefore with that shirki understanding, it's a lie, I see things and people as in control of what's going on. And when I lose control, I have to worry, because either I have to control everything or I am at the mercy of everything. And if there is no God in control of everything, if God is not Rabb in my perception, then my worry will only increase. And that's why even when people are in this, when the heart is full of anger or hatred or envy or anxiety and worry, people are going to seek to dispel this anxiety and these fears and this hatred, and to forget about them through entertainment, through pleasure, or through being busy with something. Some people, their entertainment may be working a lot or something. But because the soul is filled with pain, it does not work. And that only leads to more anxiety, more pain, more suffering. And it contains no pleasure at all. So that's how the diseases of the heart work. And the only way to stop this vicious circle is to stop lying to ourselves, to accept that we are not in control, to accept that the one who is in control of my breathing is in control of everything, and to surrender to him. That is accepting the reality. That is stopping to lie. Because if I realize it but do not surrender to that reality, still it means I am not going to accept it. It means I understand but I'm still going to lie to myself. And the moment I start lying to myself, the anxiety and the diseases of the heart are only going to increase. That's sunnatullah. That's the way things are created. And yes, it is God who increases their disease, but it is us who choose to stop it or not. It's like right now, who grows the trees? I cannot grow them. They don't grow themselves. Someone is giving them life, but it's up to me to let them grow or to go and cut them. And when I cut them, then they are given death. But I'm the one who chose death for them. So I'm the one who is choosing an increase of disease by, as the ayah is very clear, it says God has increased their disease and painful torments awaits them because of their persistent lying. So the reason is given. It means you want to stop everything or reverse the process. It starts with be truthful, stop lying. So the symptoms of this disease is distorting reality, distorting the truth. And it's very dangerous because then with that distorted perception of what is, then moral corruption and vice start being perceived as beneficial. People think it's okay to lie, it's okay to steal, and they start, the end justifies the means, and there is no end to it. And so corruption and vice are perceived as beneficial and entertaining. And worship and virtue are belittled and even scorned in our times. Piety is seen as something you mock. People can mock you because you are like too pious. What does it mean, too pious? There is no, if you know who God is, if you know the reality, there is no way to be too pious. Because it's like nothing belongs to me. It's like saying you are too grateful. Be a little bit grateful to God, it's enough. What does it mean? You don't know what you're talking about. It's utter ignorance and very arrogant because it's a self-deception. And that's why what comes to my mind is like people can go around half naked and it's perceived that lovely, that's people are freedom. When it comes to covering, why not? Why are people not free? Not all people think this way, but some people insist that no, they are bothered if people are going around more covered. And they are, even if they are not believers in God, they are hypocrites in what they claim, because they claim to be pro-freedom, but they are liars. They only allow freedom of vice or freedom of being like them. They don't allow freedom of being different, for instance. And this is true for all parties, but especially for someone who does not have a grounding in any reality, then everything goes according to their worldview. But for some reason, it doesn't work that way. So we are told in Ayah 10, in their hearts there is a disease, and God has increased their disease, and painful torment awaits them for their persistent lying, meaning because they persist in being false to themselves. And all these scary diseases of the hearts and their scary, horrible suffering that results from it are all due to one thing: persistent lying. Subhanallah. So this phrase at the end, بما كانوا يكذبون, and كانوا has this constancy, indicates constancy. This phrase indicates the ugliness of lying, the atrocity of lying, how poison lying is, and it indicates how severe and detestable the effects and the results of lying are, because lying is at the basis of unbelief. And unbelief itself is a falsehood and based on falsehood, and it is a kind of lying, and it's the worst kind of lying. It's lying about God, about who they are, who we are, about what the reality is. And so it is a sign of dissembling, a sign of hypocrisy, and not being truthful to oneself as well. And so lying is a kind of slander. We are told a lot in the Quran that the mushrikeen or the unbelievers, they slander God. And they slander his rububiyyah, his wisdom, his beautiful divine names, because they either don't see them or they see them and attribute them to themselves and to other things, even when they do not deny God. And so lying destroys virtues, destroys good morals, and it poisons the individuals and eventually the society. And the results of lying are hypocrisy and fakery, and they lead to lack of trust among people. They destroy people's lives, but they also destroy communities. If you get one liar, a whole group can be affected by it. And that's why we need to be very careful and remember God very often and make istighfar constantly and pray for help and remind each other. And in his tafsir of Surah Al-Baqara, Imam Nursi rahimahullah, he says, if you ask, isn't lying excusable for some good purposes? And his answer is, he says, if to lie is imperative and its advantages are certain. However, he says, often what people perceive as a good reason is generally a false excuse. People are very quick to say it's for a good reason. It's a white lie. And he says, just look at the world, the disorder, the chaos in the world testify to the overwhelming harm of the pretext of lying for benefits. But he says hinting and allusions are not lying. And he explains, he says, the way is twofold. Either silence, because truthfulness does not mean that one says everything that is true. If when you say everything, you think it's going to cause harm, so you are caring about others, not about yourself, then you may withhold, keep silent. Do not lie, but keep silent. Or honesty, because truthfulness is the basis of Islam and a characteristic of Iman, of belief. And he says, belief itself, Iman, is truthfulness. And it is based on truthfulness. And that's why it reminded me that the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't lie even while joking. So he'd play with words with double meanings, but he used to never say a lie, even in the guise of a joke, subhanallah, because truthfulness is what made the followers of the Quran, the followers of the Prophet ﷺ, so excellent in character. And that's why, like Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he was called Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the truthful. Subhanallah, it became like his epithet. While I don't know, I have a question, but I don't know if I should bring it or not. Maybe you will.
Anybody ask questions to you?
You can ask questions, but maybe, I don't know, it just came to my mind, I'm not sure. So I was thinking about how this lying and hypocrisy is very much based on selfishness, self-centeredness, that yes, the person is unaware, and that's why they don't know who God is, but that unawareness is somehow not making an effort to surrender, an effort to know who we truly are, to know what we are doing here. So it is closely related to selfishness. And the more you read in the Quran, it's just so scary, and you think this is the worst thing that can happen to someone. But then I thought, and if I'm misleaded, please point it out to me. At least these people, they are, yes, they are lying. There's no condoning of the lying, but they are seeking some approval. How about people who want approval without even playing the game? Like I remember more and more people, the youth now, they want to be as selfish as they wish. At the same time, they want the people around them, primarily the parents, to put up with them, with their selfishness, and to even treat them nicely and serve them. Like they are not going to be the children, but the parents have to be nice, understanding parents. And like the other people don't have any right to be selfish like them, as if they are the only ones with a choice. And if anyone will say, yeah, what are you doing? They will call them, like, they would call them on it. So they recognize selfishness in others, and they probably recognize it in themselves, but they, for some reason, they are stubborn in their selfishness. For some reason, I thought, how do we deal with this, with this kind of behavior? And by the way, selfishness, maybe because last week I just was reading something else, and I found this book about psychology of children, and I did not read all of it. I just looked a little bit, and it was talking about actually selfishness being, in the introduction of the book, being one of the major causes of excessive anger, of defiant and controlling behaviors, and rage and hatred. And it was saying that because selfishness is usually not recognized as selfishness, and is not recognized as one of the possible causes of intense anger and rage and defiant behavior. It was about children. So instead of the educators or psychologists, they misdiagnosed the children. And so it was like children are sometimes misdiagnosed with ADHD because they display impulsive behavior, and they get angry, they throw tantrums, and so they think that they have ADHD, but actually they do it only because they're not getting their way. They seek attention, or they're not getting the attention that they want. So I thought it was interesting, maybe, that even selfishness is so much. We're in a society, and a society I don't mean only here in the West or something. It's like a global culture. In a culture, let's say, more than society, there is a culture. Selfishness used to be recognized as selfishness, but now, because selfishness is not recognized as selfishness, the authors were saying, then they will give it a name like ADHD, when the kid has nothing to do with ADHD. It's just he's being selfish, and that's it. He doesn't need any medication or anything. He needs some good, responsible parenting, less permissive parenting. It was, subhanallah. And so they were talking about how to protect these children, because if you protect them through a more responsible education style, then you're protecting the whole family and the whole society eventually. Because so they had a list of damaging effects of selfishness, and lots of them are things that, if you ask our grandparents and grandparents, they know them. Lack of respect for parents, lack of gratitude, strong sense of entitlement, acts in a controlling way, bad temper. Isn't that what everyone knew? Now, like, it's a book is written about these kind of things. And so when I was reading about these diseases of the heart, and how the diseases in the heart increases, because when people don't get what they want, when a selfish person don't get what they want, they get either angry, or if it's a more passive attitude, envious of others, or they get angry at life, they hate the situation. And can you see all the emotions that are growing in that poor heart? And all this anger, this envy, this hatred are only going to increase the sickness of their hearts, and increase their dissatisfaction with themselves, with their life, and it's going to increase their torment and their feeling pain and feeling dissatisfied, because they are heading the wrong way. That's not how you get happiness in life. I mean, even if someone does not believe in God and Akhirah, it is sunnatullah too, or more fitri, let's say, more in accordance with the way we are created, to reflect the beautiful names of God, even if it's not in His name. Being more kind, being generous to others brings more happiness to the heart. To care about others and not only about oneself, and therefore to be more respectful to others, to be grateful, to be humble, which are all the opposite of being selfish. Because no one likes selfish people, even the selfish people themselves. I don't think it's possible for someone to like themselves, at least when they are being selfish. Because I don't know if there is someone who is always selfish. Inshallah not. So even with no God and no Akhirah, being selfish is lead to an increase of sickness of the heart, even if there were no God and Akhirah. But the fact that there is God and Akhirah we know that, and the evidence is because we have that sense. So when with that sense of eternal lasting happiness, lasting justice is not fulfilled, the heart cannot be satisfied. And when it is not satisfied, it is not in a neutral state. It is dissatisfied. And if the person is selfish and lying to themselves and the whole world revolves around them only, and especially imagine if you add to that, if they feel being wronged, it must be totally unbearable. Not because they are fond of justice for everyone, but for themselves. They're going to feel very sorry for themselves. And being sorry, it's more than being sorry. It's going to be very painful because they are going to feel victims and they can't do anything about it. It's not like you say there is akhirah, God sees everything. He will transform every injustice into justice in this world and in the next and make it the best for the believers and those who surrender. If you don't have that reality to fall back on, it's going to be unbearable. And all these beliefs, people are mostly not consciously aware of them. That's very important. And that's why we are warned in Ayah 10 that there is a disease in the heart, but the more if they don't stop lying, if they persist in living in this way, then God increases their disease, because that's the way the creation works. And the result is not, okay, I don't care if he increases their disease. Subhanallah, the result is each time, like before, agonizing, very painful suffering. Because that's when we take it seriously and stop and say, oh, I don't want that. The heart is the seat of belief and the seat of feelings. And the feelings are the sign, like signposts, like the red light and green light for the ruh. So it tells us if we're going the right way or the wrong way. And if there is painful torment, it's like big red light, an alarm, alarming us, warning us, stop, something wrong is going on here. You don't want to carry on this path. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وارنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين. So that was the last thing about selfishness is I have not figured it out. It's just my question and my wondering. Thank you.
Maybe we'll look at it maybe next time we meet. If we have an answer to share.
Not necessarily an answer, it's something to reflect on. Definitely, selfishness is related to, it is because of our selfishness that we fall into hypocrisy, or that we are held back into some degrees of hypocrisy instead of totally, completely, fully, wholly surrendering to the degree that we know and believe in God. If we know whatever we know, why don't we fully believe in it and fully surrender to that degree? Something is holding us, and that something is to do with selfishness. And selfishness is identifying with a false sense of a false self that we made up for ourselves. And that false self has nothing to do with the reality of being abd, of being totally dependent on our Rabb, of having no control of even our breathing or our seeing. So it is related, but I was just wondering and appalled at that potential in us where we're not even being selfish and trying to get approval from others, but like that attitude of self-entitlement where everyone has to approve of me when I don't even try to get their approval. I will make you do everything to make you angry, but you don't have the right to be angry, and you have to be nice to me. This is beyond my imagination. It makes me feel so helpless. I can only pray, Ya Rabbi, don't put me in that situation because I cannot handle it. Not only me not doing it, but being around someone like that is also extremely burdensome. You feel totally helpless. Maybe from one point of view, it's good. It reminds you of your ubudiyah. Inshallah. Go ahead, and maybe if you have comments or questions, have you, could you figure out the answers to your questions, for instance? Can you share?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Yeah, it's just this idea of selfishness. I'm not sure about the definition of this term, but sometimes I do see that like a good abd that wants to please Allah, and he's rushing behind being the first one to do, good things so he can get more rewards. That's the kind of selfishness I see it, in a sense, because he wants to, of course, he wants to please Allah, but at the same time, he wants to be the winner, like tasari'u, tasabaqul khayrat. I don't know if you got my point.
No. Is it based on reality or not? If it is based on, it is given to me, and I'm asking God, I am not in control of everything, but I recognize that I have been given this need to be better, or everyone has, we share the same needs, but we experience them in different ways. So we have priorities, our priorities may differ. Someone may be very curious and so needs lots of knowing and knowledge, but there are two different attitudes. One is, I will learn a lot and I will, people may not do it consciously, but the underlying attitude is like, I will be the one who knows the best. No one will know more than me. Is different from someone who knows that knowledge is a gift and that God is the only one, the source of knowledge, but loves knowledge and recognizes that the love and need for knowledge is also given to me, and I'm grateful for it, and I enjoy it, and I see it as the means to appreciate the name Alim, for instance. And so the more knowledge is given to me, the more gratitude I feel, the more I feel closer to God. I know him with this name, and I get to know how beautiful this name is, this name tastes. So this increases my ubudiyah, not my selfishness, because it's not based on a lie that I am going to construct an image of myself as the one who knows more than the others. So it's not what we do, it's how we do it, what we believe about it. That's why I said in the beginning, and in Ayah 8, it was clear that hypocrisy is related to belief. Does it make sense?
Yeah, thank you. I think it depends on the attitude of the person himself.
Otherwise,
yeah, that's what you're saying, right?
It's beautiful. Actually, it becomes ubudiyah. It becomes your ibadah, your worship. It increases you will feel closer and closer to God. It increases not disease in the heart, but the opposite. It fills the heart with joy, and it becomes like a mirror to the divine names. Alhamdulillah, it's just so beautiful. One is so ugly because it's based on lie, and the other one is truth, and therefore so beautiful. But the needs are the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It was a nice, very important question, inshallah.
Are there any comments, questions? If not, we will stop here for tonight and continue, inshallah, next week. We would like you to...
We can't hear you, Isra.
Huh?
I could not hear you.
How is it now?
Yeah, better.
Better. So may we request that you include us in your prayers. Inshallah, we include each other in prayers.
And Ramadan is very close, just around the corner. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Were you going to ask about the time for during the month of Ramadan, inshallah?
Yeah, let me stop recording.